Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be here today and see so many familiar faces and so many new faces, which is a proof that heating and cooling is becoming a focus of attention, and there are more and more excellent people and experts working on this field, which we all need. Yeah. So I think... Okay. So let me start with a very simple statement. Heating and cooling is very big, a big end-use sector, and it is also a very difficult sector to tackle when it comes to our energy and climate policy goals, namely decarbonization, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. So it is about around half of the EU energy consumption. Most of this is based on fossil fuel, used in a very inefficient way, most of the time in buildings and also in industry. We know the figure that around 75% of the EU building stock is inefficient, not built around any energy efficiency standard or renewable energy supply standards. Most of this heating and cooling today is supplied through individual appliances, around 90%. A large amount of this equipment stock is also inefficient, oftentimes beyond the technical lifetimes. And then we also have district heating and cooling, which today at European averages is not very significant, around 10%. We have tackled so this is a sector that is quite difficult to decarbonize because it's very diffuse, very diverse. It consists of many users and many suppliers. The technology is extremely diverse. Infrastructures that serves this heating and cooling need is also very diverse and very entrenched and specific according to member states and even according to specific geographies. We have achieved some progress already because the EU policies due to the 2020 renewable energy, energy efficiency and decarbonization carbon emissions target have already started to tackle these sectors since 2007. So we have some progress made in this sector. You can see in these slides that heating and cooling is big. You will see a bit of divergence in terms of how big and energy quantities are used in the heating and cooling sector. That again comes from the difficulty to quantify this sector and to have an exact statistics. But you can see that this is the largest sectors. Today, around 18% of this is only renewable. So we have a lot to do to tackle this sector. And probably we have already harnessed the low-hanging fruits in terms of energy efficiency and renewable energy. So in the post-2020 framework, we will have to devise more targeted policies, more specific and efficient policies to decarbonize heating and cooling. In the Renewable Energy Directive, the new proposal for the Renewable Energy Directive, we quantified that this sector will also have to contribute to a larger degree than it does today, alongside with electricity and transport. So heating and cooling will have a fair share of efforts in the post-2020 energy and climate framework. The challenge of decarbonization is that this is, as I mentioned, a very large, very diverse sectors, and we need to implement many different decarbonization tools and policies, and we need to calibrate those and combine those in a consistent manner. The first objective is to reduce the energy consumption in this sector, which we can very well do. And the second is to supply the remaining demand as sustainably as possible by mainstreaming renewable energy in heating and cooling. We will need for this all solutions. Why? Because even if we are very ambitious in energy efficiency, we will have a very large energy demand, and this is a demand that affects our very existence and very life. So this is about thermal comfort in buildings, and this is about industrial processes that produces the product, the very products that we need for our everyday life. So even if we implement energy efficiency to the maximum ambition level possible, we will then need to face other decarbonization options, one of which, and first and foremost, is renewable energy. And we will need to mobilize all these resources to supply this remaining demand. This will happen through many technologies, many types of resources, that will require investment, in the energy production sphere. It will require investment in energy infrastructures. It will also require investment in the demand side to make these new sources compatible with buildings and with industrial needs. So for that, we will need, this is a new area, and we will have to combine many technologies, many new skills, many new solutions. We will need to understand the sector much better. We will have to have method, tools, and strategies to address this sector, and update the skills for all actors that are involved in the user on the production side. And we will have to deploy the strategies effectively. So this is a sector where we will have to mobilize many resources, many technologies, and basically build up new skills and new solutions, and these have to be done together. We already have a lot of tools and regulatory frameworks and solutions to do that. We have the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, the Energy Efficiency Directive, the Renewable Energy Directives. We also propose to update all these existing frameworks to make them fit to the post-2020 framework. But I think the key that we need to understand here, that we need to combine all these tools and solutions, and we will have to define which out of this portfolio of legislative tools, regulatory tools, technology possibilities that are available, which one of those that will serve our purposes the best. This implies a huge amount of understanding of this sector, a huge amount of analysis, and putting together intelligent strategies and policies and measures, ultimately. And I think this is where this project that we are today here to discuss has the big added value for our policies, because Heat Roadmap Europe project is the one that I know that is able to put together all these complex elements in one. So it is not only energy efficiency, not only renewable energy, not only mapping demand and supply and how it is going to evolve on the long term, which we actually really need to understand to plan the capacities and infrastructure of the future. But it is also many other things, waste heat, the resources, the technologies, and very importantly, how much cost or investment is entailed if we choose this or that solution. And so ultimately, the project, I believe, is going to be a great help for the member states, for national and local authorities, to have a comprehensive package, a knowledge base together from which they can take inspirations from which they can go to select tools that is adapted to them and tools that will guide them how to do this big journey that we are embarking with the 2030 framework, and we continue from the 2020 framework towards the full decarbonization of the heating and cooling sector. The clean energy package is trying to do the same, but it's, as you see, it is acting on multiple instruments together. That's the novelty, and that's the reason that the Commission came up with this mega package. But how to apply all these tools, put them together, see them together, and define ultimately for each member states, for each geographies, local and national geographies, the exact optimal package of solution will be a great challenge, and I hope this project will be a very good guide for all these actors to do that. Thank you.
Hi. What a crowd. It's not bad for a project meeting. Thanks, Oksana. Thanks, Eva. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Just a few quick words from me before we get on our way. I made a few slides. Whenever I start talking about Heat Roadmap Europe and Heat Roadmap Europe 4, I think about it as part of a broader kind of current of work that has gone on for some years now. This photo takes me back to my first days in this job. Some of you will recognize Nicolas Février, who is Alessandro's predecessor, who was the person who finally put the last touches on the Stratego proposal, which was the project that preceded this one. That is the afternoon of the day of the deadline for the submission of that proposal. That's 3 p.m. You see how happy he is and full of optimism? That's 5:30. But by 6 o'clock, I had to leave and go get the kids. You're not going to believe me, but it's true. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I came back to the office and I found Nicolas alive and still working, and not in a particularly great state, but he stayed up all night to finish this work. And first of all, I was enormously grateful and enormously impressed. And second, I did what I think you should do in situations like that. I made him go running with me. So we went out. And we ran around for 45 minutes and talked a little bit. And I asked him, is it going to be worth it? And what is it that we want out of all this? And he said, I'll be happy if people just stop calling us the Cinderella sector. And I think probably just about they have, to say nothing of all the work that's been done around Europe and in countries and communities. But just if we think about Brussels, how much has happened the last couple of years? And I mean, Eva just talked about it. All the work that's suddenly being done here by lots of different people and actors, including the Commission, on the heating and cooling sector, this big conference that took place. This, which I hope you don't mind me borrowing from one of your colleagues, new areas, cooling, district heating, waste heat and waste cold. If you really want to upset a Scandinavian, tell them that district heating is a new area and just sit back and watch what happens. The heating and cooling strategy, which came last year, it's not the winter package, is it now? The clean energy package that came out a few weeks ago now, a couple months ago now, absolutely full of the heating and cooling sector, not just district heating, but the broader question of sustainable heating and cooling. And that just wasn't there a few years ago. So I think that Nico's dream has come true. Now, to talk about this new chapter and why I think it's so important. Those of you who work here in Brussels will be familiar with what I think is an increasingly serious problem. Every lobby group, and I include us in that, we have a tendency to carry out studies. We do studies in order to get information. And then we present that information as some kind of objective truth. And we've been as bad as anyone else for that. You do your study and you kind of just about do it in good faith, but you ask the questions a certain way and you ask the right people the certain questions and you get certain answers, and then everybody comes with their own facts and says this is the truth. And curiously, they don't always match. And I think that one of the great strengths of this work that's going on now is it brings together so many different actors, and there's so much diversity and so much quality. I mean, just to take two important examples, we're working closely together with the heat pump sector. Now, heat pumps in district heating might be understood as kind of traditional competitors or enemies or something like that. It's not really good enough, because if we get our facts and the heat pump people get their facts and we both go and say that's the truth, well, it doesn't really help anybody, and it certainly doesn't enrich the policy debate. So I'm reassured that what we're going to get out of this is not just a bunch of stuff that says district heating is really nice, but something that tells a useful story to policymakers about what they should and shouldn't be doing. Same goes for the building sector. We've had these silly arguments over the years. Should we focus on making buildings more efficient, or should we deliver clean supply? It's a silly argument. And by working together with the building sector on this project, I'm quietly confident that we're going to get something that makes sense. Because I think objective truth kind of matters. More than ever at the moment, it matters. And I'm aware of it, and I think we have a responsibility to do a little bit better than just producing our own stuff and saying, here's our truth. So I'm excited about this. And what kind of truth am I hoping to get out of it? Well, for one thing, I'd like to talk about this building stock that we have. You've all seen this before. All these buildings heated with oil or gas boilers. So I hope this project can make it clear once and for all that that's not an acceptable model and it's not a sustainable model. Second, we deal with this buildings question. Do we improve the buildings? Do we improve the supply? Well, obviously, we need to do both, and there's work to be done on seeing exactly where the balance lies. But I mean, that's the point of this work, is to get into that detail and approach it in a spirit of intellectual honesty rather than narrow protection of self-interest, which is basically what lobbying is all about, if I'm honest. And finally, and this is more about narrow self-interest, I hope this project gets us a little bit closer to understanding this picture. You know, I used to work for a Danish company called Voss, and my first months in that job, I sat down with some designers in Copenhagen to make a little brochure about how nice district heating is. And I talked to the guy, the art director there, and I just kind of explained what district heating is and how we like to think about it and talk about it. And he sketched this up for us in about 10 minutes. It's amazing what people can do. And it's an important picture to me, and I still look at it all the time. And what I see when I look at it is so much more than a district heating network. I mean, it's just a means to an end. That's just a way of getting something from where it is to where it's needed. But the bigger picture here is this local community making use of its local resources and just doing things in a more thoughtful, intelligent way. And what I'm hoping is that by the time this project's over, I'm going to be that little bit more convinced that this model makes sense, that it works, and that it's going to be the story of the next 20, 30 years in Europe. With that, I'd almost like to shut up. I just want to thank the organizers, thank the various partners, the many partners, thank my colleagues who do all the heavy lifting with this stuff while I come and make jokes about Donald Trump for 5 minutes. So thank you all. And with that, I'm going to shut up so I can start listening to the real experts. To wit, my friend David Connolly, who is just one of the great team from Aalborg University who have helped us and helped Europe, I think, by delivering all this work. But he's certainly the one with the most twinkly Irish charm. So, David, coming up.